Hello, hi everyone. Welcome back to Woo Can Cook. My name is Wesley, and this is a show where we are slowly cooking our way through all of the food from my childhood. Today we're diving back into our now very extensive series dedicated to fried chicken with a shot at the Japanese popcorn chicken nugget known as chicken karaage. For those who are unfamiliar, chicken karaage refers to a style of breading and frying in Japanese cuisine that broadly applies to a number of different proteins, not just chicken. But in fact, squid and other seafood karaage are also quite common. Here in the States though, as you might expect, chicken karaage is by far the most commonly found in restaurants and iconically features a chicken breast or thigh that has been large diced into bite-sized pieces and then marinated and coated in a potato starch breading. This, of course, makes most iterations of this stuff gluten-free since it does not include AP flour, which I gotta believe is purely unintentional, but still, for the gluten-sensitive out there, there you go. In addition to that though, our potato starch also helps to create a lighter quality to our breading with distinctive nooks and crannies to it for a craggly crispy piece of fried chicken that is absolutely iconic to chicken karaage. Finally, rounding this all out for our dipping sauce, I'm also going to take my absolute best shot at recreating the Japanese sweet and savory mayo known as kewpie, which amongst a few things is going to include a pinch of dried dashi stock powder to help bring this to life. Okay, so let's get into it. Alright, so kicking things off here first, I'm starting out with our aromatic veggies, which we'll be using in our marinade today. This is 4 cloves of crushed and minced garlic, followed by 1 inch or about 1 tablespoon of finely minced ginger. We're taking a bit of extra care with our mince today because we're not going to be using our aromatics in a wok fry, which means that we won't have the added benefit of breaking the stuff down in the wok as we often do with many stir fries. Next up, rounding things out here is half of a lemon that I'm slicing up into wedges for our garnish, and that's it. We're moving on to our chicken. I know if you're thinking that this dish is super minimalist, that's because it is, which as always means that there will be all the more emphasis on the ingredients that we do use today, so again, don't be lazy. Fresh, high quality ingredients and no cutting corners today. Moving on to our chicken, I'm going with some chicken thigh today, but you can also use chicken breast as well. We're large dicing this into 1-inch pieces and then using some fun editing to clean up our cutting board here so that we may dive into our marinade next. This is 4 tablespoons of soy sauce to start, which by the way, if you're using organic soy sauce made from actual soy, then you've got yourself some gluten-free fried chicken going on here. Then next is a tablespoon each of rice vinegar and Japanese cooking wine or mirin for some brightness, acidity, and a touch of sweetness. Then finally, rounding things out is a tablespoon of miso paste, which I'm whisking up until the solids are broken down so that we may combine it with our chicken and aromatic veggies here. I'm tossing this all to combine and setting it aside to marinate for 30 minutes or up to 1 hour. In the meantime, we're getting to work here on our dipping sauce today, which is going to be my very best attempt at recreating the popular Japanese mayo known as kewpie mayo. For those unfamiliar, kewpie is essentially an aioli that's slightly sweeter and brighter than your more standard Hellmann's or Heinz mayo, and you'll see it as a topping in a lot of Japanese street foods. I'm doing ours today with a single cup of mayo to start, followed by a tablespoon each of rice vinegar and white sugar, then rounding this out with what I think is the secret ingredient here, which is half a teaspoon of dried dashi stock. This is the pantry stable dried soup base that you'll recognize from a lot of our Japanese and Korean stews, like the raboki and donburi recipes that we did not too long ago. It's gonna give a little bit of extra umami to our mayo here that's gonna help bring things to life. You might also notice that it doesn't look to be breaking down here, hence the specks of solids floating around in our mayo. Don't panic if this happens to you, that dashi powder is going to rehydrate in a couple of minutes, so just give it one more stir once that happens before you serve it up, and it should fully incorporate just fine. Next up, moving on to the main event, we're getting back to our chicken with our potato starch breading. This is a cup of potato starch that I'm combining with my chicken here, being very careful to hold back as much of the liquids in my marinade as possible. I'm giving this a quick toss in a larger bowl, and then just for kicks, I decided to do a double breading for these today. This is optional, but I did think that since our potato starch breading is so thin, it definitely benefited in helping to create a more craggly and crispy piece of chicken with even more nooks and crannies, which, let's be honest, is the absolute best part of our fried chicken today. Over on the stove, I've got my fryer heating up to 350 degrees F, and then I'm dropping in my chicken about 10 pieces at a time, being very careful that we don't overload the fryer. I'm frying these up for about 5 minutes until deeply golden brown, and then removing and immediately tossing in a pinch more of our dried dashi stock. And yes, when I say immediately, I really mean immediately if you want this stuff to stick to your chicken. A friendly reminder, don't let your fried chicken and other deep fried things cool before you try and do your dried spice toss, or else they won't adhere to the chicken and you'll end up with a bunch of dried spice at the bottom of your mixing bowl. I'm giving this all a quick toss and then repeating with my remaining chicken. This took me 3 batches altogether, I think. As these cool down, you might also notice that your chicken starts to leave behind this thin white coloring. This is totally normal and a byproduct of the potato starch, so don't panic, you can definitely still eat this. I'm serving this up with a side of rice to start, using some very damp hands to help mold my rice like so. Then next up, here's our QP, which as you'll notice has fully rehydrated our dashi stock as promised. Then we're adding a healthy serving of our fried chicken, topped with some lemon and a pinch of furikake to our rice, and we're ready to eat. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, as with many of our Japanese dishes, you might notice that our dish here is incredibly minimalist, which is honestly my favorite part about it. There's no big bold sauces or umami drivers to hide behind here, just a little bit of lemon and a pretty simple dipping sauce, which leaves everything on display. So that means if you fucked it up, everybody's gonna know. But of course, fortunately for us, we did not mess this up. Our chicken is wonderfully crispy as promised, with that absolutely iconic craggly texture to it that's a defining quality to a good chicken karaage. The double breading in our potato starch helps to create these little bits and pieces of breading for a wonderful pop of texture to each piece of chicken. Then the addition of that dried dashi powder in both our mayo and our fried chicken adds a nice subtle pop of umami to it that really has a chance to shine in a minimalist dish like this one. Lastly, for those wondering, I'm not so sure how close we got to recreating the taste of Kewpie mayo, nor was I really expecting much, although I do think at least we're in the ballpark. In either case, for what it's worth, what I think we actually ended up with is a really good umami-driven aioli dipping sauce, which honestly might be even better. Okay, so that's it everyone. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you give this one a shot. For those who are new to the channel, this one is part of a larger series that we've been doing that's dedicated to fried chicken dishes, so definitely check out that series next if you haven't yet, because there are just so many of these now. For the Bay Area locals, the Woo Can Cook Fried Rice Pop-Up is kicking off a new residency at the Good Hop in the Oakland Kono district every Friday, so come by and say hi if you can. More about that at woocancook.com/eats. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, be nice interneters, and I'll see you soon. Bye.